Hello and welcome. In today's video, we're going to be installing Immich on the server and getting that set up. I'm going to show how to use an external library or an existing directory structure. What I will not be showing is how to use the Immich application on your phone to back up your photos. In a previous video, I showed how to use SyncThing to take care of that. And I much prefer and trust SyncThing to take care of the actual backup process over Immich itself. What I really love about Immich is its interface and its machine learning or its AI capabilities. It can do face detection and it can do object detection. And I'll show you what that means. I'll give you a look into the instance that I actually use so you can decide yourself if you want to install Immich. Now, if you already know you want to install Immich, go ahead, skip that section. I will have timestamps for you to skip to the actual installation. And you can see on this tab, this is the instance that I actually use personally. And we're just going to go through it. You can get an idea of how it works, what it looks like, and if you want to install it for yourself. Now, over on the right, you have dates. You can easily navigate to any date of your library. And then you can also search for your photos. So this is the object detection that I was talking about. If we search for dog, it is going to do a pretty good job of showing you pictures of dogs that exist in your library. This is one of the big selling features for me, object detection, and it works pretty well. Now we will go back and we'll head on over to the Explore tab over here. You can see it also does face detection and it will pick up places out of your GPS data on your pictures. And with that GPS data, you can also click on map. That'll give you a map overview. You can dig down into different locations that you've taken pictures in. And then next up we have sharing, and this is another big feature for me. I don't know how you share pictures with other members in your household, but with Immich it makes it super easy. You can share single pictures, whole albums, or your entire library if you so wish. And I don't have anything in here right now, but I'll just show you quickly how it works. If I wanted to create a shared album, I could just click add photos, and then we just click into some pictures to add to this album. We can give it a title, Frank. Click on the person we want to share it with. We could put a description in here. And now Kat, when she logs into her account, will be able to go to sharing, and this album will show up and she can click into it and look at it. So this is what Immich is. And we're going to be moving on to the installation process next. Here we are in the official Immich documentation. And what we're going to want to do is go to install here and then to all-in-one community. This is going to be the easiest method to get this thing stood up and running. Of course, there are a lot of other options you have available, but this is what I would recommend. And then you're going to want to click on this link, GitHub repo. I already have it opened up here. But if we scroll down, we're going to have this Docker compose file, which we can copy. Let's next SSH into our server and then head on over to our Docker folder. Now I'm going to diverge slightly in how I set this up. And I just want to forewarn you, it's mostly because I'm picky and I want more granular control over my Docker services. You do not have to do it my way if you're not as picky as me. You can just create an Immich folder here, cd into it, and then create your compose file. Copy this entire thing, paste it in, and then make the pertinent changes. So in here, you would change this in the Open Media Vault, your default user that you're using. User group is 100, and then change your time zone. Your database host name is going to be the IP address of your server. Your Redis host name, same thing. We'll store our Immich config file in this directory in a config folder. Now on the photos directory, this is where if you're going to use the app and you're going to let the application do the uploading of your photos for you, this is where your photos are going to end up. So you could put this in this existing directory in photos or wherever else that you would like. However, like I said, I'm not going to be using the application to do the photo uploading because I already have SyncThing set up. Again, watch my previous video on how to do that. But this next line is where we can import existing directory structures or existing pictures that are living on the server. And this is where if you have like a digital camera and DSLR and you upload your photos to your desktop and then you back up those photos from the desktop to your server and you already have an existing directory structure in place for those photos that you organized yourself, this is where we're going to be using these extra lines here. Or again, like in the case where I showed, we're using SyncThing to manage the photos on our phone and upload them to our server. We're going to be giving it that directory here as well. Now, this is how I would set this up. Let me open another SSH session here so that I can navigate to different directories. I'm going to SSH into OMV again, and then we're going to go to CD shared backups, Tony phones. Remember, SyncThing is backing up all of our phone data to this location, all these different directories. And we have this camera directory. This is where all of our pictures from our phone are going into. So we want to use that location. Let's CD into camera. We will copy this and then we'll paste it over here. And now this directory would be mounted to /import. However, we have other things that we want to mount, so we want to organize this mount point a little bit better. We're going to put it in import Tony and then camera. And then I'm going to duplicate this line because let's say we also have a situation where we have a DSLR and we have a desktop and the desktop is also syncing the picture files from it to the server as well. Well, then again, on our server here in the location of desktop, we have a photos directory, and we would also want to mount this into Immich as well. Let's copy this directory and we'll paste it here, and then we'll just save photos on that. And let's say we have another user, another member in the house. We'll make another line for them, and their pictures are getting uploaded from their phone using SyncThing as well. And that would be like this. And then we would mount this like that. So this should give you an idea of how you may want to set this up for yourself. The only other thing I'll point out here is we have a :RO. We haven't encountered this previously in any of the Docker containers that we've spun up before. So I'm just going to take the time to explain this. It stands for read-only. What that means is this directory is getting mounted to this location, but the Docker container only has read-only access to it. So it can't actually change or delete the files. It can only read them, which is good. That's what we're going to want here. We don't want Immich to potentially mess up our picture files. The next thing we're going to change here is the port number. I think we're already using 8080. I could be mistaken on that. You can pick any port number you want. You just can't pick one that you're already using. And then down here we have Redis and Postgres. I'm just going to change the name to just Postgres. And you can see the environment variable, it's creating a user and password, and it's also creating a default database here. Feel free to change the user and password if you want. If you do, you will have to change these variables up here. And then we also have down here a path to the Postgres data. And we would put this in the current directory and a data folder. And that's how you would set up this config file. I'm going to spin it up this way just to keep things simple. But at the end of the video, I'm going to separate these services out. So if you want to do it the same way that I'm going to end up doing it, go ahead, skip to that, and then jump back. So Control S, Control Q, and we're going to sudo docker compose up-d and type in the password. Now I'm going to take it down because it did do something that I don't like or use, and it created its own network. So I'm going to do sudo docker compose down, Then I'm going to edit the compose file, and then we'll duplicate this line and drag it down here for Redis, duplicate it again, and drag it down here for Postgres. And then, as you guys know, if you follow along with my channel, I personally just like network mode bridge. If you don't care that it's going to create their own network, then you don't need to worry about this, but I'm going to do the same thing with that, and Control S, Control Q, and then we'll run our Docker Compose upd again, and Immich should be running. Let's go ahead, type in the IP address, 192.168.122.2, and give it the port that we set, which was 8088. All right, and here is Immich running on our server for the first time. We're going to click on Getting Started, and then we're going to give it an admin email address, set a password, and name ourselves. Then we have to log in. And we get a nice welcome message where we can set our theme. And then it's asking us about a storage template. And this is what the directory structure is going to end up looking like if you use the application to upload your photos. Remember, again, I do not use that feature. I use sync thing. But if you want to change the directory structure, you can do so here using some of these different variables. And there's some presets down here too. I think if I was going to use this, I'd probably go with album name or some type of, there's a lot of different date format options up here. You can change it however you like there. Now here we have our first page. And like I said, we were going to set up our external library. So that's what we're going to start off doing. In the documentation, it walks you through doing that. Basically, what we need to do first is click on administration. And then next to our user here, we're going to click on the edit button. Now for the storage label, the first thing I would do is change that to your name. And then for the external path, we're going to want to pick that path that we set for ourselves in the compose file. So that was import Tony. And then if we wanted to have another user, now with that done, the next step is we're going to click on our user icon, click account settings, and go to libraries. And this is where we can add an external library. Click on create external library and then edit import paths. And we're going to add those paths that we had in our Docker Compose file. So if we open that back up, remember for this Tony user, we created import Tony camera and import Tony photos. And I did put some dummy image files in those two locations. So when we scan this library, they should show up in the application here. We'll click on save, and then we'll click on this and scan new library files. Now, if we go over to photos, you can see those dummy pictures did show up here. So it is reading from those two directories. Now, if you are using an external library like this, the next thing I would do is head on over to administration, settings, library, and then you have scanning features here. You can check watch file system, and that should pick up fairly quickly anytime you add a file to it. Otherwise, have periodic scans. You can set it with some of these presets here. This is just changing a cron job expression down here. So if you wanted it to scan like every 6 a.m. in the morning, you could do that, and it would add the new files then. But I think watch file system should work pretty good, and you can set it as that, although it does say it's experimental, so that's up to you on whether or not you want to use that feature. Since we're in the settings here, let's take a look at what else we have. We have users. We already went through this. We created a user. We changed our external path, our storage label. Under jobs, we have a bunch of different tasks that we can have Immich run. You can see some of the things that are listed in here and their given description. So generate thumbnails, extract metadata, form library tasks, smart search. So this is where it's going to run the machine learning, the face detection, facial recognition, transcode videos, storage template migration, and another migration feature. So those are pretty self-explanatory with the descriptions on what they do, and you can run those tasks manually yourself. Going back to settings here, we have job settings where you can set how many jobs are running at the same time. We already went into this library settings here where you can set how often the file system gets scanned for new pictures. We also have logging, we have machine learning settings. There's a lot of different things in here. We're not going to go into too much detail. You can feel free to dig through this yourself. I basically leave most of these settings at their default. It's not too much that I really need to change in here. Let's go into our user settings though. Here we have appearance, so you can have it automatically detect your theme based on your browser preferences. Some account details here. Can generate API keys, see authorized devices, your library settings. Again, this is the one that you're definitely going to want to set up if you have an external library. Time-based memories are kind of nice. Those will show up on your main page. It'll say like 2 years ago this picture was taken. Change your password. Then here we have sharing, and this sharing is if you want to share your entire library with another user. So you can click on this and click add. Now this other user would be able to see all of your pictures except for apparently archived and deleted. Add or remove a couple different sidebar menu items there and turn off the deletion warning for the trash. Another thing you can do is if you want to change this user icon over in the top right, you'll find a picture that you want to use. And then from this drop down, you can click as profile picture and set as profile picture. Then if you refresh, that'll be your profile picture. And I showed you sharing under my personal instance, but here we'll do another album where we can share a couple pictures from. Add a title. And if you wanted to add more photos, you could click on this. You can click on share, pick our user that we want to share this with. If you wanted to delete it or download it, you have a couple options. And we'll go back. And if you want to change the default picture for any particular album, you can click on it and then set album cover up there if you wanted to change how this album cover shows up. So this is a really cool feature. Again, you can say stuff, leave comments or on individual pictures. It's really cool. If you want to set a favorite, you got this handy heart icon up there, and then all your favorites will obviously show up under your favorites menu option here. So that's Immich in a nutshell. The only other thing that I would point out is if you have a really big library, after you add it and you want to run some of these jobs on it, if we go back to settings here and to jobs, and you want to do the object detection and the face detection and those types of things, you're going to want to do that early in the morning. You're not going to want to do that late at night because it's going to take a long time to run. And if you have been following along with this series in the way that I showed how where your backups are running at night, you don't want to start this job and then your backup process shuts down your Docker containers to take the backup. It's going to interrupt this process. So what I would recommend, you run these tasks for Immich early in the morning, go to work, come back, and they're all done. The next thing we'll do is set up our monitoring system and Dashy. Remember, we have a script for our monitoring system. We'll cd to our scripts directory, and we called that Docker Health. Then down under containers, we just need to add the container names here. So we added a new container called Immich, and we have a container called Postgres now, and also Redis. Save that and quit, and then we will go to our dashboard, and then we'll go to health checks and sign in here. And then we'll add those checks. So we have Immich, use suggested slug. Remember, in our script, the slug has to match the Docker container name. So if you verged from my naming convention, just take note of that. And I just like to check my Docker containers every hour. Add another check. Actually, let's go back into this one. And we'll set tag to Docker as well. Then we'll add another one for Redis. Now let's run our script and make sure these all ping. It's always a good idea to double check your work. So we're going to sudo docker health. And you can see we got green check marks and a fresh ping here. Next thing we can do is add Immich to our dashboard here. We'll click on Interactive Editor. We'll add a new section. We'll name this one Files and Documents. Add an item, Immich, icon, FL image. I messed up the icon. HL. There we go. And being that Postgres and Redis don't have a user interface for us to use, we're not going to add those to our dashboard. But in a future video, I'll be showing how to install and set up AdMiner, which is a nice UI for managing databases. It supports a bunch of different databases like MariaDB, MySQL, Postgres, all from the one interface. It's really nice to have. But that does it for this video. Thank you for watching, and you have a nice day. This is where I'm going to break down that compose file into individual compose files. Again, this is just because I'm picky and I do this for my own organizational purposes. It's not something that you need to do. But if you are interested in doing this as well, I'm going to show you that process. So where we left off, if I open up our Immich compose file, this is where we're at. And if you skipped ahead, I did make 2 additional changes here with restart unless stopped and network mode bridge, and we added those to both Immich and Redis and the Postgres. And I think I also changed container name to be just Postgres here as well instead of Postgres 14. So I'm going to do that. And then we're going to Control S and Control Q. So that should be exactly the same as what it was before you jumped ahead now. I'm just going to quickly show you how I would break this apart. We're going to go back to the Docker directory, and we're going to make a Redis folder and a Postgres folder. Then we're going to cat that Immich compose file, just so I can copy it. And then we're going to create a compose file in the Redis folder, paste it in, and then just basically delete all of this and delete this. Control S, Control Q. I'm going to do the same thing for the Postgres folder. Control S, Control Q. Then we'll go into the Redis folder, sudo docker compose up-d. So we're spinning up the Redis container. And we'll do the same thing in the Postgres container. We didn't have this exact. There we go. And then we will do the same thing in the Immich folder. Although before we do that, we'll need to delete those components from this compose file. Control S, Control Q. Spin this up now. If you did skip ahead to this section, jump back to where I actually do the walkthrough in the settings.